In a recent announcement by Reswatix, the second-hand developer for Tower Defense Simulator, or the main programmer I should say, has recently posted a statement on the Tower Defense Simulator Discord server. He said, looking for short feedback on what you, the community, added most before this summer. Think he meant want, but besides that, that's actually going to be the point of this video. I'm going to go over a few things that I think would be very necessary inside of Tower Defense Simulator right now as it is. I'm going to go over some simple changes that could be made probably pretty quickly, and then some more complicated changes. I'm going to try to remove opinions from this as much as possible, maybe leave those into the end to see what I would personally want in TDS, but I'm probably just going to start off talking about things most people would want. So let's get into the first changes. So let's get into the first and most obvious changes that we would definitely like to see in TDS. More elevators. This is definitely a problem we all know about. There's only, 7 elevators currently in the lobby? And for the amount of maps that there are in the game, you have to wait usually a pretty long time for the one you want to spawn. Of course, matchmaking is going to be coming out, but I just assume that it's going to take a while for them to still release it. If they're releasing it in the next update, then of course this isn't going to matter, but if they're not, then we certainly do want a lot more elevators. And also in the same area, so we can actually see what maps are spawning. There really isn't a point for having little to no elevators. It's not like it makes people want to play other maps anyways, because they're just going to sit there and waste their time waiting for a map that they want to play on. Second of all is hardcore rebalancing. Well, sure, hardcore is kind of hardcore at the moment the way it is. It's not hardcore in the way we want it. Right now, hardcore is only used to get one tower, and that is the accelerator. So sitting down and doing the same thing over and over for 18 hours straight following a document just to get the accelerator doesn't really sound fun at all, does it? The game gets really repetitive real quick, because once you find out the best way to do something, you're just gonna have to do it over and over again. It'd really be nice to see variety in the game, so I definitely believe that they should rebalance the hardcore system a bit. They definitely should make it easier so that you don't need golden towers and event towers to beat it, because that's just kind of unfair. But at the same time, they should also ramp up the rewards for winning at the end. That way you're not spending as much time grinding the same mode over and over on the same map. That just gets boring. And also, this would actually give you a purpose to experience the entirety of hardcore, because as is right now, it's just more worth it to die earlier on, claim the gems, and repeat. You'll be wasting less time and you'll get just as much, if not more gems. And this certainly breaks the purpose behind the development of the entire hardcore mode. The devs certainly didn't spend their time creating every single enemy just for you to die halfway through it, because that's obviously better for gems. And the next idea is map rewards. What is the point of literally 90% of the maps in TDS if they're harder and just don't give you any extra rewards? There obviously needs to be a different reward system, meaning that easy maps like Abandoned City would give a little bit less rewards for winning, say like 15%. Normal maps would give as many rewards as they normally do. Hard maps would give probably 20% more rewards. And then insane maps are certainly a lot harder, so they should give anywhere between 50% and 70% more rewards. That way you actually have a motive to grind on harder maps. And this will add more diversity to the game as well, since you're not just going to be grinding the same stuff on repeat over and over. Next up is rebalancing the golden skins. Golden skins like the Pyro or the Soldier just really aren't going to cut it when you can get something like the Crook Boss and it's going to be way better. Now, they did say they're going to have evolved towers, so of course we'd want to see those as soon as possible, because nobody just wants to grind a week of their life just to get some crappy tower they're not going to want to use. So that is something guaranteed that we want in the game. Either a buff to the bad golden skins, or just completely remove the entire feature and replace them with evolved towers as soon as possible. Next up, custom keybinds. Say you click your farm and you want E to be your sell button, you just click it and then you press E and it'll sell. That means you can drag your mouse really quickly over the towers that you want to sell and sell them all really quickly. And this is also going to be very useful for abilities. While it may not be a necessary feature, it's definitely going to make it a lot easier to manage your stuff. The next thing is a new difficulty. Once you reach a certain level, say you unlock all of the towers and get all of the golden skins, there's just really no incentive to play the game. There's nothing to use those towers for, since you could just use easier towers for literally anything, except for of course hardcore the way it is right now. But even then, that relies on RNG. It would be really great to see a mode that puts all of the best towers in the game to the test so that you've actually been working for something the entire time, and that you can't just beat using the standard towers you can get from the shop. Okay, that statement's a bit misleading, all the towers come from the shop, but I mean all of the OP ones. If there was a mode that put all of the OP towers in the game to the test, say like Hidden Wave used to, then it's definitely going to make the game more enjoyable for even the highest level players in the game who've unlocked everything and just don't want to play anymore because it gets too boring. Now, as I said, this must not require RNG. A good example of this would be like the boss battles in Bloons Tower Defense 6. There's a very difficult boss, and you must manage your eco and defense so that by the last wave, you have strong enough stuff to defeat the final boss. These elite bosses are most certainly challenging, because they put the best stuff in the game to the test, and, most importantly, all of your abilities. Even really pro players may find themselves struggling against the bosses, so it'd be very nice to see a mode like that really puts your skills to the test. And finally, we'd like to see more hardcore towers. Hardcore is a pretty cool mode, not gonna lie. Not the way it is right now, but the idea of it is most certainly pretty cool. But of course, the fact that you're only grinding for one tower in the game, and that's the accelerator that costs gems, then it makes hardcore only useful for about a day of your life. After that, you're never gonna touch it again because it's just boring and not useful for anything. Now, I know I mentioned that we'd like to see more hardcore towers, but I do have a second idea to add on to that, and that is currency exchange. Certain towers may only cost gems, but if the developers still want hardcore to be useful even after you get the accelerator, then they can add a currency exchange system that can convert gems to coins. A good conversion rate would probably be around 1 gem equals 7 or so coins. This means if you beat hardcore, you get 150 gems, but if you already have the accelerator, then you convert those gems to coins and you can get 1050 coins, which, not gonna lie, is not a bad price for playing hardcore mode, especially since the mode takes 40 minutes. Yes, this may not be as effective as just speedrunning Molten constantly, but it can always add variety to the game if you're just bored of playing the same mode over and over. And finally, solo rewards. What's the point of playing in a solo instead of with a friend if it's just harder? Unless of course you don't have friends, or maybe you're just tired of noobs constantly placing bad stuff, which then makes sense why you're playing in solo, but still, there should be a reward bonus for beating a mode in Fallen. Undeniably, it's harder, and the reward doesn't have to be anything huge. Even 10% could still work, just anything that would give us an incentive to solo over not. Oh, and if you're gonna add this, then obviously add solo elevators. But yeah, that one's pretty simple, that's just it. Now I know I said that's the last one, but I'm actually gonna bring up one more thing, and that is rebalance the freaking bad towers right now. Rocketeer, Paintballer, Freezer, all of those, they're completely garbage. And I definitely think they do need a rebalance. I mean, take a look at Rocketeer. It's more expensive than the Paintballer, yet has a lower DPS. That just makes no sense. I definitely think those towers do need some sort of rework, maybe something like they were in the older versions of TDS. Now, those were my suggestions that I think most people would like to see. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my opinions, which I don't know if they'll interest you as much, but since PvP is being added, for example, I think it would be a really good idea to have a rank system. This would be really nice since matchmaking is coming out along with that. It would pair up good players with other good players, and this rank system would be based off of the amount of wins you have. A good example here would be BTD battles too. Every time you win, you gain a trophy. Every time you lose a trophy. That way you can stay at a certain skill level if you just can't seem to keep winning, but if you're constantly dominating people, then it'll obviously rank you up all the way until you're matched with people similar to your skill level. Another useful feature in my opinion would be a red box around the towers when you're placing them, so that you can see which range they're going to occupy once they're placed down. When you're placing down a tower, you don't know how big the red box around it is going to be, so you may end up placing a tower just in the right spot so it covers the placement for something else important. So I think it would be a pretty useful change if we could actually see how much space the towers would occupy before we place them down. Another feature during placement would be to see a tower's range at max level. You know how a tower has a blue range around it when you're placing it down? Say it had a range outside of that, a second one, that was, say, green, and that range would indicate how much the tower can see at max level. This is going to be useful for multiple reasons, because of course you can see how much track the tower is going to cover while you're placing it down at level 0, but you're also going to be able to know how much track it's going to cover at max. That way you can optimize your placement for the long run, and not have to sell and rebuy your towers if they're in a bad spot. On the topic of that, maybe a hide players option would also be useful so that people don't constantly stand in the way of where you want to place your towers. Maybe it doesn't have to make the players completely invisible, but it can make them transparent and not get in the way when you're trying to place your stuff, so you can actually place your stuff in good spots. And before I go, one more thing in my opinion, and my final idea would probably be a veteran crate. Once you've grinded so much of the game to the point where you just have an absurd amount of coins left over, maybe make a crate that is extremely expensive, say 200,000 coins, so that extremely hardcore players of the game will still be able to buy something. Now the reason this idea isn't exactly good is because the towers obviously can't have buffs. That would be just unfair. You have to grind 200,000 coins to get buffs. But I think it'll be a cool feature so that we get somewhat of a reward for playing that long. If you guys agree with some of the stuff I said in this video, then copy the link and tweet it at Razwadix in his tweet that he asked for those changes. And that's about it. See ya.